Let's see how long this computer takes to do this. Good day, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to Splendid Isolation number 96. As always, I'm going to start us off with a bit of a tune.
The 15th day of July, we glittering spear and shield. A famous fight in Flanders was fought in the field. The most courageous officers were English captains three, but the bravest man in battle was brave Lord Willoughby. For 7 hours to all men view this fight endured sore, until our men so feeble grew that they could fight no more. And then upon their horses full favourably they ate, and drank the puddle water, for no better they could get. When they had fed so freely, they kneeled on the ground, and praised God devoutly for the favour they had found. And bearing up their colours, the fight they did renew, and turning toward the Spaniard 5,000 more they slew. The sharp steel-pointed arrows and bullets did fly. Then did our valiant soldiers charge on most furiously, which made the Spaniards waver. They thought it best to flee. They feared the stout behaviour of brave Lord Willoughby. And then the fearful enemy was quickly put to flight. Our men pursued courageously and ranked their forces quite. And at last they gave a shout which echoed through the sky. God and St. George for England, the conquerors did cry. For the soldiers that were maimed and wounded in the fray, the Queen allowed a pension of 18 pence a day. Besides all costs and charges, she quit and set them free. And this she did all for the sake of brave Lord Willoughby. Then courage, noble Englishmen, and never be dismayed. Think that we be but 1 to 10, we will not be afraid to fight with foreign enemies and set our nation free. And thus I end this bloody battle of brave Lord Willoughby.
Sorry, forgive me, guys. That was obviously a song, a traditional English song from the time of the Spanish Armada. So there we go. How are we going this evening, gentlemen?
Wonderfully. How are you, sir?
I'm always good, mate. How are you going there, Mitch?
Same old, same old.
Jobu, how you going?
Splendid, buddy, just splendid.
And Binary Surfer, very happy to have you at last on the stream. How you going, mate?
Thank you. Much better than I've been the last few weeks with COVID. Although I've still got this miserable cough, hence why I'll be going on and off mute a lot to avoid you hearing me spluttering into the microphone.
Cool, man. Cool. I must say that I managed not to send Ataman the link. I wrote it and then didn't send it, so I just sent it. Hopefully, he will get it and join us shortly.
That's all right, mate. He's got cold takes anyway.
No, Ataman's a very good man. But anyway. All right, guys. I'm going to start us off with, as usual, with anything you wanted to bring up, and I'm going to start with Chris. Chris, is there anything that you wanted to bring up as a first take for this evening?
Not just yet. I'm going to follow along, buddy.
No worries. Mitch, anything?
Aside from my usual spiel about the Ukraine war, I remember us hearing about interest rates in the UK going up from 0.75 to 3% in one under Jamie Hunt. So
yeah, biggest rise in 30 years, I believe.
Yeah, judging off what Disclosed TV said on Telegram, yeah.
Yep. If you want to talk about Ukraine for 5 minutes, go ahead, man. I'm very happy.
I don't really know what to say other than it's just usual missile strikes and the usual suspects moaning on Twitter because all the blue checks are having to pay $8 now to Elon Musk.
Yeah, I do. Look, I do. The thing is that Russia is obviously taking down most of Ukraine's like utilities, basically now, and don't see much that Ukraine can do about it.
We're talking about air defense from NATO, but I mean, judging by the blood donations beginning from NATO these days, and I think the air defense will
You mean the blood things with the like AIDS and monkeypox and all that stuff in it?
Yeah, 60,000 liters of blood has to be signed off because it's like at least like a third of it is infected with HIV as well as a hepatitis B and C.
My God, how we have fallen.
It's not really surprising when you got New Zealand, for example, where they've got a HIV positive blood donation centre now. It happened back in like 2020, I believe. So it's like, given how depraved the West is, it's not exactly shocking, is it? But then again, considering HIV rates in Eastern Europe, I mean, you think the Ukrainians will be used to it by now?
I heard that.
Sorry, carry on, guys.
I was going to say, just on that, I heard that it's discrimination to prevent homosexuals from giving blood. So effectively, what they do is they take the blood and then just bin it straight away. So I can't see that being put into circulation.
In the bin.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like it's like you'd think this was comedy, except it's not. It's like what the modern West is like today.
It's like it's a Greek tragedy, but it's not even like it's just a complete parody of Greek tragedy, except in this. Oedipus doesn't shag his mother. No, what happens is that like Oedipus just gets put into a wheelchair after a car accident, and just ends up getting fucked in the arse instead. That's basically Western civilization in a nutshell.
Oh, look, I'm very fond of Western civilization, Mitch, but like
I mean, I'm talking about at this moment in time.
Yeah, absolutely. The modern one.
Enjoy it while it lasts, non-refundable.
Yeah. Exactly.
Some offers may expire. Stocks limited.
We are absolutely at the position of the late Roman Empire when it's being overrun by all the barbarians.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, the thing about the Roman
I'd say
Empire.
it's worse than that. We're not just we're there. We've gladly opened the gates and are saying, "Come on in."
Yep.
We're not being overrun. We appear to have forgotten that an empire can even fall, let alone attempting to defend it.
Yeah, we are absolutely surrendering binary. I totally agree. That's where we are. We're just surrendering and saying, oh, yeah, come on, fuck us up the arse. That's really what we're doing at the moment. And our leaders, actually, to be fair, not most of the ordinary people, but that's what our leaders are doing.
Yeah, the only thing I got against like Roman Empire comparisons is that so I remember hearing from Survivor Drive that in the latter days of the Roman Empire, like Italy just received so much immigration from the Middle East that practically Rome was pretty much Jerusalem 2.0 in terms of genetics. And the only reason why Italians are more European in genetically compared to what they were in the latter days of the Roman Empire is because the Germanic tribes invaded. So
yeah, I was just going to say that, like the northern and central Italy down to Rome never became very like black because of the northern invasions that like didn't allow that to happen.
yeah, it's kind of like similar to they reckon also the plague of Justinian probably helps, but like yeah, you can just imagine that Italy was pretty much just all one big melting pot of like all manner of like Levantines, shall we say, and other people like that. But then the Germanic tribes just come in and then just like re-Europeanize the place because it's like yeah, I remember like a history teacher used to ridicule the idea, like you get this whole idea that by Arthur de Gobineau that nations fall because they dilute around racial DNA and whatnot. But then you look at the Roman Empire and it's kind of vindicated because compare the early day Romans like Julius Caesar to Romans in the time of like 410 AD. Pretty stark difference.
Oh yeah,
genetically.
absolutely, Mitch. I totally agree with you. Ataman, good evening, mate. I'm very, very sorry. What I did was I wrote all of the stuff to send to you, and then didn't send it.
It's all right. I thought I'll message him, and then I got sidetracked and completely forgot.
Yeah, no, apologies, mate. I'm
No worries.
Really, I would never miss you, but you know, well, I mean, I would miss you, but I wouldn't miss you on purpose, is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, all right. So, anything else on that, Mitch? Did you have anything like latest on the Ukrainian war or anything?
Yeah, there was so earlier this week there was the grain deal that, let's face it, it was pretty much like a psyop to like that allowed the Ukrainians to bomb the Kerch Strait Bridge. Putin said he was going to withdraw from that. A couple of days later, he then backs on his word, and
that was apparently due to Turkey, I believe, was it?
Yeah, the Turkish basically, I can't remember what they said, but they said, yeah, to us the deal's still on, and Russia just chickened out of going against the deal and just got back straight into business over it. And they're saying, oh, well, we got written guarantees from the Ukrainians, but they're not going to bomb us again for the Kerch Strait Bridge and not going to use this agreement for their own ends. Because
the only other thing I'd say, Mitch, is that with regard to the Nord Stream pipelines, apparently the Russians are claiming the Royal Navy did it. And absolutely, the Royal Navy with the Special Boat Service could have done it. Absolutely, they could have, and I said so at the time.
Here's a fun, quick 30-second story for you. I have several friends who are ex. Let's leave the description at Royal Marines, if you get what I mean.
Yep.
If you know what certain services are made up of in constituent parts. And shortly after that, I had a conversation with one of them on a messaging app. Said, "Is that the sort of thing you guys are capable of doing?" He's like, "Yeah. It was a specific mission set, undersea pipeline demolition that we trained for, and it was one of our key tasks in the event of a Russian war kicking off, was to basically go and blow all the external pipelines."
Yeah.
What you do, you go down in a submarine, you pop out of the sub. If it's shallow enough for deep diving, if not, you send an ROV down with some explosives strapped on it and go boom.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right, Binary. I said at the time the Royal Navy could have done it. I still don't understand what possible British interest there was in doing it, but all right.
I mean,
Have we seen the leak, this supposed leak about Liz Truss saying it's done
Yeah, yeah, we've all seen that. Yeah,
over the holographic image to Sith Emperor blinking or whatever it
And
was.
listen, you know what? The Royal Navy submarines and the Royal Navy generally and the Special Boat Service are the elite of the elite. But I just wish they were used for British national interests and not America, really, or the gay empire.
EPOM's going to apologise to the Americans. I heard like a month of yank bashing after the pipeline got blown up.
The day I do that, Jobu, you may fuck me up the arse because I'll never do it.
Oh, hard pass, mate. Hard pass.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's. I'm still holding out hope that it wasn't us because that would be gross. But
it could certainly have been us. Yes, as I said at the time.
Yeah.
Everyone claiming it's Russia is ignoring the basic realities that they have there is no calculable reason why they would blow up that pipeline.
Why would Russia blow up their own pipeline? It's ridiculous.
Exactly, they could just press the off button.
Yeah, I mean, you'll get some people on Telegram on the Ukrainian side who'll just be dishonest and so for example, they'll argue about Ukrainian sovereignty, but then say nothing when German sovereignty gets shredded by Nord Stream getting torpedoed. So there is that layer of it. It's just intellectual dishonesty on part of the Ukrainian side.
I mean, this isn't a popular view, but I'm not particularly pro-Russian, but I equally cannot see how we expected any other response with shoving NATO right up to the border, given the Russian history and their desire for a safe buffer to prevent, well, pick a historical invasion of Russia. You can go with the easy Second World War one, but that wasn't the only one.
Well, I
it's
mean,
pretty deep in the racial memory when you lose, what was it, 7 or 8 million to basically a combination of throwing bodies into the meat grinder and retreating.
Yep,
indeed.
And then on top of that, Binary, don't forget, like Britain at the moment is being invaded across the Channel, and whereas historical Britain would have stopped that immediately, we're just accepting it and paying £7 million a day to support.
Let's be clear about this a second. We aren't accepting it. The average person on the street, I don't think, is accepting it. If you look at
the government,
if you look at even the most pro-migration immigration polling, only about 1 in 4 people accepts this level as acceptable. What we have is, and I'll use the word very directly, apologies if this gets you demonetized, a bunch of traitors in government who appear to have basically either their own interests at heart or be marching to someone else's tune. The most charitable assumption you could make for them is that its GDP line must go up at any cost. How GDP line goes up with people that are, if you look at people like AA's videos on the topic, net takers of between £6,000 and £20,000 a year, I don't quite understand, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah,
Rishi Sunak is not my prime minister. I'm sorry. I'm an Englishman, and Rishi Sunak is not my prime minister. He's an Indian.
Honestly, that whole thing, in my opinion, is a total distraction. Look over here. Debate whether the guy in charge is an Indian. The important part is that his dick is 6 inches up your ass, proverbially speaking, not what race he is. I'm getting fucked by a guy who happens to be a different faith. Surely the important thing is you're getting fucked, not who's fucking you.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at, like, we had the lockdowns, where now we've got this sort of political palaver going on, and for all of that, I mean, I posted a Substack centered around an ONS report in the Discord the other day that showed that, whites, you could say, in the UK, it doesn't delineate specifically, but whites have seen an average sort of shortfall in their household income of like 10%, and other groups have seen an increase across the board across all different groups, 25% for blacks, and a little less for other groups. So there's a massive there's the state is operating as it's designed to, behind what is sort of played out as a sort of orchestrated circus. It's doing what they want it to do.
Did you see Wolkoff's video the other day about the Serco grift?
No.
Yeah, that's worth a look. It's quite a long one, but he goes through Serco and another company up north where they basically institutionalised the intake in housing and whatnot of all these migrants, and how they're incentivising landlords to basically chuck native Brits out of their rental properties so they can be rented by Serco as a landlord for the asylum seeker, so they guarantee the payments and perform upgrades to the property and all that sort of stuff. So,
well, it was a contract one from the government, was it not? It was government subsidised program. But they do the same thing here in Australia. Essentially, I used to work in a immigration detention centre in Vabraki. That was many years ago. But Serco was doing the same thing back then here. So just on a smaller scale. But this is a whole new level they're doing now in the UK.
Yeah, it's £7 million a day. These economic migrants cost the UK. It's ridiculous.
And of course, it doesn't matter how principled we think that some landlords or whatever might be. At the end of the day, if they're going to be told that they're going to get a guaranteed 5-year mortgage income, and it's guaranteed income, guaranteed rent payments, guaranteed everything paid for. So why would they turn it down?
Not only that, they'll paint the
Chris, if you look
place,
at the
they'll
long
renovate it.
I'm sorry.
Go on. No, go ahead, mate.
Well, say more than that, Chris. If you look at the long-term effect, what is the long-term mass effect of this? Paying extremely generous rates to landlords, that drives the entire rent market up in price. So if the market rises in rent price, what's the logical effect on house prices? House prices rise as well. Therefore, you've got to pay more for your mortgage, which means you're going to charge more for the rent. So it's eventually going to drive everyone out of the housing market who could otherwise maybe just about scrape onto the ladder or just about afford a decent rent, etc. That the long-term effect is it essentially drives up every set of prices everywhere because you're flooding the system artificially with money.
And in the meantime, of course, your ordinary Brits, if you get married as a young bloke, let's say in his mid to late 20s, you get married and you cannot possibly afford to buy a home.
Yeah, so I'll give us as an example. My partner and I both now middle class professionals. I came from working class, I've been middle class most of my life. My partner is solidly upper middle class. We both have degrees and professional careers and have done since we were in our early 20s. We're now approaching 40 on her side and slightly on the wrong side of it on mine, and we are just about able to afford our first home. Just about now. Right, and that is
ridiculous.
And that is crazy if you consider that we are probably in the top. We're not in the top 10% or anything, but we're probably in the top quartile for earners.
Yeah, no, absolutely binary. I mean, look, a young couple in their 20s should be able to afford a home. And were there not mass immigration into UK, they would be able to afford a home. That's the main reason they can't.
No one will say this, though, on the mainstream channels. I mean, you're only going to look at, what's his name? Tory boy, Tom Harwood. On Question Time, something happened when the prices... Well, we all know what happened. It went from 10, 20, 30,000 a year to in excess of 200,000 a year net migration. You can literally look at the numbers, but no one will say this because everyone is either in consensus that no one wants to say those words or is still scared of being called racist for saying it, despite the fact it has nothing to do with race.
Well, Tom Harwood is a gay boy in my view, but
true.
Yeah, I mean, in my view, he's a gay boy. I mean, he's not conservative in any real sense, and he's a Lib Dem, really. Why is he even on?
So is about 70% of the Conservative Party, but never mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't disagree with that at all, mate. Absolutely, totally agree with that. But Tom Harwood is not a Conservative. I'm sorry, he's not. Nor is at least 60 or 70% of the modern Conservative Party.
Yeah, and
They're
I'm being
not.
generous on that. I would say it's almost 100% if you went on social conservatism. If you just go on fiscal conservatism, all right, maybe 25% of them are. But if you go on social conservatism, which is what, in my opinion, is going to start mattering very rapidly in the next 10 years, because both parties have led us to a place where financially we're screwed no matter what. So it'll start to come down to the social side of things. I can't think of a single MP in there who is genuinely socially conservative with any prominence. Can you? Can you name one? I would have said Rees-Mogg once upon a time, but he's bent the knee on a number of things.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, I think Rees-Mogg was always kind of that way, though. I think he just did a good job of covering it up at one point.
I think there are at most about 35 or so actually Conservative MPs.
Mm. But like Rees-Mogg's father was in with the drug legalization lobby back in the day.
Yeah, and he was also, and he was in with a lot of other bad stuff.
Yeah, and Countess ignored Enoch Powell heavily and used his various positions of power to screw over the actual Conservatives within the party. So
yeah, I mean,
and Rees-Mogg seems to have completely followed in his footsteps. So
and that was back when the Telegraph was actually a Conservative newspaper. For God's sake.
Yeah, so called.
God, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I used to read the Telegraph. I like my daily read was the Daily Telegraph, and then on Sundays I'd get the Sunday Telegraph and the Sunday Times. When I used to read newspapers, which of course I don't anymore, because like they're all just full of lies, basically.
Well,
all right. Binary, did you have a first subject you wanted to bring up that it's not on the agenda this evening?
Yeah, I'll throw it out there because it's a very interesting development. You may have seen that a number of people have been trying to go into the court system from vaccine injuries, basically. I've been injured by a vaccine. My employer pushed me to have the vaccine. I had it, and now I'm trying to sue my employer. They've just been granted standing, i.e. the court will hear the case. That could be very interesting because the way the legal system typically works on this is once you find a solid precedent that covers a number of aspects, you will find that employers typically will start to pay out routinely out of court.
Hopefully.
On that basis. So what I hope we're going to see is a reasonably broad multi-application judgment, for lack of a better term, because that will then open the floodgates to actual serious levels of compensation. And you're talking major numbers. Has anyone ever had a critical illness or a serious injury cover from their employer? You ever look down the list of things you could have, like loss of an eye is worth this much, loss of a limb is worth this much, permanent disfigurement, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. You generally, if you've worked anywhere industrial, you've probably had one.
Yeah.
You look at things like permanent cardiac impairment or stroke, and they're in the region of 750,000 to $1 million plus payout.
Of money.
And that's before you throw in any kind of like penalties for malice, legal costs. I mean, legal costs on a major case will easily reach $500,000 now. So per person, you're probably talking about payouts into the £1 million range.
Binary, I think it's like inconceivable now that anyone can argue that Pfizer, for example, did not lie, because Pfizer's admitted they did lie.
Well, for your benefit, I'll say that they're entirely safe, and Susan, is correct on whatever view she has on that. But you are correct in that the evidence is mounting very rapidly that at least in some cases there are adverse effects, which let's be honest was always going to be the case. There is no vaccine on the planet that doesn't have at least some adverse effects, and they're like those none whatsoever, none.
So this vaccine, and it's not a standard vaccine at all because of the other stuff they've added to it, it's actually killing a lot of young, fit people. That's
Well,
my
would appear
opinion.
to be. I think, to be fair and to be objective, what we don't understand is the long-term effects of COVID itself on things like the heart and the immune system and the rest of it. So
Yeah,
I would say there's a grey
blame that.
area. There's probably some degree of both going on. But what
We
we
could-
don't know
we
is
could
it
blame
90%
that,
COVID, 10% vaccine? Is it 90% vaccine, 10% COVID? Reality is nobody knows at the moment.
Yeah.
And because nowhere
Yeah.
seems to be willing to study it, we're probably not going to know for some time.
Well, I don't know. I suspect that Binary, you will have seen Dr. whatever his name is in the UK, who used to be an absolute shill for vaccines and all the rest of it, who has completely reversed his position and now is saying, why are so many people dying for no reason? Have you do you know that guy?
I had seen the guy you're talking about. Yeah, his name escapes me now. I mean,
Yeah,
so
me too.
I'll give you a bit of information about my medical history, but you find this interesting. So I had a heart issue after having earlier in the year, without going into details. And one of the things they put me on long term was a gene therapy drug afterwards, which is essentially a similar technology to what the mRNA vaccine uses. So the technology itself isn't unsafe, because this particular gene therapy has been around for about 8 or 9 years now, and is genuinely almost zero side effects. There's less than 1 in a million people that have any. And I went from crippling pains on the previous medication, like racking pains daily, to basically almost none. So there are genuine applications for this technology. What we seem to have done wrong is just go, right, let's do this thing, dump it onto the market as fast as we can. I think Pfizer admitted they tested it on, 9 mice or something ridiculous?
Yeah.
Nine chimps. They tested it on like less than 10 animals and then went, yeah, it's safe.
Yeah, but they didn't even test it for like bad things, and they admitted that too. But yeah, I mean, look, all right. Look, 2 years ago, if we said it came out of a laboratory, we would have been banned immediately. And now that is generally accepted. It did come from the lab.
Yeah.
And
What was the good analogy that someone gave a while ago that I quite liked on that? The likelihood of it not being from the laboratory was akin to having a murder happen in the house next door, finding a knife of a unique type in that house with blood on it, and concluding that what had happened is someone came in off the street, shot the person, and ran out again, despite the fact you've got the fingerprints of the neighbor on the knife in the house and covered in blood. That's the level of like ignoring the evidence that went to draw that conclusion.
Yeah,
I'm wondering if any of the previous processes of bypassing the FDA originally under the emergency order had anything to do with just sort of the free reign that Pfizer and whatnot had with their selective studies, whatever they did on it to prove that it was safe. I'm wondering if that had anything to do with that prior condition of stepping over FDA.
I would guess so, because you don't try and suppress 8,500 pages of research documents and testing for how long did they try and suppress it? Was it 50 years or something?
Yeah.
75 years, I think.
Yeah, you don't do that arbitrarily unless there's stuff in there you don't want to come out. I mean, not just because of whatever statutes of limitations various countries have,
it was all because
most people would be dead by that point. If you think the average person who was getting the vaccine would be in their 40s, add 50 years to that, 90, the average male lifespan is 82 at the moment?
79, I think.
79. Well, exactly. Anybody over a certain age is going to be dead by the point that was declassified.
Yeah, it was a total lie. All of it was a total lie. But, Dan Andrews might still win the Victorian election, which, to me, is amazing. Because of all the bad shit that White did, he set the Victorian anti-terrorist police loose on ordinary tradie guys who were just protesting about they wanted to be able to work and support their families. He had Victorian police smashing little old ladies in their 80s to the ground and like shooting fucking pepper spray into their face. He arrested pregnant women in front of their families, bashed down the doors, and arrested Australian military veterans in their own homes. But somehow, people in Victoria might vote for this cunt still.
Yeah, Duke, we've covered this before, mate. You got to factor in the 2-year demonisation campaign against anyone that wasn't getting the vaccine, right? This was a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Don't forget, So when John Q. Normie saw the people getting shot on the steps of the shrine with rubber bullets, the Normies thought they had it coming, mate.
They saw that as just desserts. Yeah.
Imagine standing on the steps of the fucking Australian War Memorial in Victoria and getting shot by the Victorian police, and that was all right. Just imagine that, boys.
Yeah, and just exactly as Jobu said, the the messaging was so omnipresent, and it was so effective and so persistent that by the time it was reaching the point of government literally acting physically towards their citizens for stuff like this, most of the people watching on were just like, oh well, they deserved it, they should have got vaccinated. They didn't try to keep us safe. They were selfish.
All those poor cunts on the steps of the Australian War Memorial getting shot by the Australian terrorist police, care of Dan Andrews, were like bad bastards.
So the funny thing is, over here we really don't hear anything about the Aussie stuff on this issue. Like when it was going on, we heard a little bit of the Canadian stuff, but even the news coverage of that cut out quite quick. And they don't talk about the extent of the issues going on in Australia over this stuff at all. I kind of wonder if maybe they were a little bit worried of frightening people, but then again, there were people here pushing for exactly the same stuff. So
I know you Aussies went pretty hard on this, but the gold standard of crazy authoritarianism appears to belong squarely to New Zealand at the moment, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know what it is in the New Zealand psyche that's allowing that, because I'd always thought they were pretty chilled out people, but
well, they generally were. I'd suggest it was just, I mean, what do you know anything about the Jacinda Ardern's government leading up to her being elected?
Not really.
The horse-faced feminist. She was a mate of Tony Blair. Surprise.
Yeah, well, so for the most part, all of any semblance of testosterone vacated New Zealand many years ago. They all moved over here. They all live here. all the workers, tradies, high skilled workers, engineers, whatever. They just moved over here because New Zealand pays about half of what we do here.
For anyone who's watching this, let me just say, the one thing you could never do in Australia was to slag off the Anzacs. The guys who fought for Australia in World War One and World War Two and Korea and Vietnam and all that. That was the one thing you couldn't do. And Dan Andrews changed that. Dan Andrews had the Australian anti-terrorist police firing plastic bullets at people who were sometimes themselves Australian Anzac veterans on the footsteps of the Australian National War Memorial in Melbourne. That's what Dan Andrews did, and he might still get elected in Victoria. That's how terrible this fucking place is.
Well, we're all in the same boat, so.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not slagging off Australia. this is like what is wrong with the whole Anglosphere and the whole Western world. But yeah,
This is it's a segue into the main topic, Duke, because around Twitter, because all information around the way the pandemic was handled, or what the vaccines were doing, it was all censored, mate. So you were asking before in the Discord as to whether or not social media is important, and you just got your answer.
yeah, okay. Well, we'll carry on from that. Gents, Chris, what's your opinion? Is like Twitter viable and what have you? I don't know.
Is Twitter viable?
Vital.
Well, at this point, I mean, I'm hoping that whatever he does with it does deflate what it currently is, because it was for too long far too much of a node of power for a very corrupt circle of a mixture of journalists and politicians, and it basically became the main node of power for that realm. So I just hope that it does deflate, but it is an enormously vital platform, whether we like it or not. it just is.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take that.
I mean, Twitter specifically, it's their platform, isn't it? It's where all the journalists coalesce. It's where all the petty bureaucrats coalesce. It's a place in which they disseminate ideas outwards to the sort of the sort of rear guard agents of the regime. So.
Yep.
But if you go back to 2015, 2016, like I mentioned in the Discord, it wasn't always the case. I mean, yes, that occurred, but there was also a very strong counter narrative that was present during the populist wave of 2015, 2016, and that was suppressed by all the censorship that occurred, not just on Twitter, but Twitter played a big part in it. So if that gets rolled back, then things could get interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of I don't know. Maybe it is still early days. Musk is. It's kind of weird because people thought he was probably a lot more in the know than he was, and he seems to be going through this sort of this arc that's showing him as just kind of being a bit of a sort of boomercon and sort of libertarian, as it were. He's going around and he's going, oh, but this is about free speech, isn't it? And he's kind of having to learn the hard way that there are certain people you have to play to and certain people you should probably ignore.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of that going on, but also, look, I'm a long-time corporate guy, so like, you got to give Musk a bit of time to get his feet under the desk, So he's taken over. It was a hostile takeover, effectively. So I can't imagine he was getting a lot of information out of the existing Twitter management. So he's got to open up a few cupboards and find where the spiders are, and that's going to take at least three months or so. And then any changes that he plans to make, that's got to go through the usual software development, lifecycle planning, and implementation, and all that stuff. So the people jumping up and down that he hasn't, fixed it in 3 days is a bit unrealistic in my view.
Yeah, fair enough. Jobu,
no.
I think that's fair enough.
I mean, let me. So you may or may not know, I work in human resources, relatively senior level. Yeah, tell me about it. The HR is deeply paused as a function, but there is a section of us that are quietly networked and resisting it and trying to unroll all this stuff. But anyway, come back to the point at hand. So Musk has done pretty much exactly what I would have advised him to do, which is go in there with a plan, find out who you can get rid of on day one, i.e. what have you got in your current portfolio of businesses that you can slap in there to replace people generically, like, say, network architects, basic techs, finance people, all that shit. Get rid of everybody on that purely on a cost-saving basis. Number two, he appears to, based on what people are saying, and I'm assuming there's some truth to it, have had people do a basic dive through the HR files to look for people who are showing signs of being highly ideological, and found reasons to get rid of teams where that is prevalent, or where it is obviously ideological, like the DIE team that he's fired in the entirety. That's a good sign. He's going to have to, however, and I can't stress just how difficult what he's done already in the space of a week is to do. If you took my entire HR team that I'm part of and you bent it to that task that he's done in an organization of that size, and you made it work 24 hours a day, I reckon it's a solid 4 days work just to come up with the names, let alone the paperwork and the legal. It is actually quite hard to do. So he's achieved a lot in a week. I think the question with Musk, that the most revealing thing will be, how much does he play to the gallery to appear reasonable, and how much does he genuinely give people like the ADL and Greenblatt, that smug little cunt, attention? How much is he playing to the gallery and say, look, I'm being reasonable, they're really unreasonable, versus genuinely compromise with them? If, for example, he keeps in the majority of the excuse the background noise, fireworks, the majority of the let's pick an easy one, misgendering. Let's say if he keeps that in, right, as a banning offence on Twitter, which it currently is, that's an obvious concession that has been genuinely made as a concession.
Misgendering, that's pretending that a bloke who claims he's now a woman.
Yeah, if I call Caitlyn Jenner
actually
a
a bloke,
Twitter, I'll get banned outright.
Yeah, ridiculous, because that's a bloke.
Yeah, despite the fact that Caitlyn Jenner's has children that he fathered. Sorry, Susan, I mean she fathered with her sperm.
Female penis.
Let's back up, and her female penis. Let's back up from that a second. The point is, there are key markers. At the moment, Musk has said himself he hasn't changed any of the code. What he has done is kick off the people with their foot on the scale. They're gone. Whatever's still happening now is happening on an automated basis. There are no people interfering with it anymore, as far as I can tell.
Yeah,
So
well,
what we'll see now over the next 3 months is, does he rip out the code that's doing this as well, or does that stay? And that will tell us really how far he's willing to go.
Well, I mean, part of that is, so there was 3 departments that he got rid of. There was the Human Rights Department, Climate Change Department, and a third one along those same lines, something about equity, right? So, and that they didn't actually create content and push it out onto the platform. They just policed conversations that were already occurring on there. So they're gone. But their work product would have effectively been what we call shadow banning. So you posted a couple of climate change denial tweets, and then they'll press a button and flag your account in some form, and then you don't show up on the timeline anymore. So there won't, those people won't be continuing that process, but that'll have to be unwound by removing shadow banning or whatever it is under the covers that is performing that function, and that's what's going to take a little bit of time.
I will also just
Musk
point out
has
that
said very clearly that he doesn't want to go down the shadow banning route, etc. What he wants is to have a tiered system for content. So essentially, safe content, all puppies and kittens and pictures of adorable, budgies and whatever. Stuff that everyone would get on with, stuff that is considered divisive, and then clearly not safe for work stuff. People calling each other cunts and the rest of it, or discussing things that are considered. So to a degree, it will be down to the user, is his vision, I think, for what they want to see and don't want to see. Now, it's not going to solve us the problem of the left sitting in their own echo chamber, but it will at least allow us to not actively be suppressed if he adheres to his vision. My opinion, just for the record, is that he's a man going on a journey. He probably knew some of this going in, but has probably been a bit shocked at just how hard he's gotten kicked in the teeth, as per his tweet the other day about, look, if you keep it up, I'm going to go nuclear and name and shame every fucking one of you people, basically. And bear in mind, he's got the receipts in the DM conversations.
And just to circle back to something you said about using the ADL as the example, right?
We must stop using the term circle back, mate. We really must.
What was it?
Jen Psaki, honestly. In a sane world, that woman will be managing a play group somewhere, not being White House press secretary. Don't even get me started on the current diversity hire in the position who can't actually even manage a sentence. At least Psaki could speak. That's the standard, apparently. Can you speak? Yes. That was the standard then. Now it's you have the right colour skin.
So just to circle back to the bit about the ADL. So you can't just tell someone like Greenblatt to fuck off, right? Tempting as that might be. But so Musk had the meeting with the ADL and the 7 or 8 other organisations in good faith, and now the ADL has continued the pressure campaign around the advertisers. So that shows that Greenblatt is a bad faith actor in Musk's eyes, right? So that's the journey that you're referring to, that he's going to have to go down, right? And he's going to that will build a case in Musk's mind that these people can just, they're ideological, they're not good faith actors, and they can just be ignored. And that,
I think he's also playing to the gallery. I think you're right, and he's playing to the gallery. Does everyone remember that scene from one of the Iron Man movies where he stands up and says, "Well, I mean, what do you want? I've tried to play ball with these ass clowns. What more do you want?" And kind of,
I never watched any of those.
Look it up a second. Look up Robert Downey Senate testimony.
Iron
Man Senate testimony. There's this brilliant scene where he's playing and go on.
Sorry, all I was going to say is that basically, why are we adopting this lefty way of speaking, like circle back, etc.? Don't get it.
You got to remember, I walk in these circles all the time, so
yes,
I'm
corporate
probably
it's corporate talk.
Slipping into that speech than anyone else.
It didn't originate with her, mate. Let's just move on from that, all right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Come on, Duke. Let's table that concern for now. And
Yeah.
I second that motion.
Sorry,
I think that's what Elon is
just
doing is what I was trying to say. I think he's at the moment in that space of, look, I'm trying to be reasonable, and when they continue being utterly batshit, you can turn around and say, well, what more do you want? I tried to play ball. They're still trying to wreck my business. Go fuck yourselves. And at that point, he kind of has the gallery on side, if you like, with him to a degree.
And if he's getting the funds from the making people pay $8 for their check mark, that removes decreases the reliance on the advertisers as well. So.
Do it. So, I won't ever pay $8 for a check mark.
Honestly, I'm quite happy to pay $8 for it, purely because it enrages all the journalists. the fact that someone like me could have a tick next to my name will drive journalists absolutely insane.
Oh, yeah, well, because they get paid so little these days because they're mostly freelancers. And like they're lefty freelancers. And so once in a while, one of their articles gets published.
Well, what the verification check mark represents is it attests that you're part of the new police class on there, right? So
you're in the club.
You're a sort of de facto, or what's the term? Authoritative source. So if there's a bunch of us guys running around with the check mark as well, then that decreases their stranglehold on the information more on there.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you say, Jobu, about the stuff. Whether it will move anything much is a different story. But yeah, in terms of what you say about the actual basic stuff, I agree with you. What does everyone else think about that?
Well, I mean, all I'll say is to bring up to go back to something that Jobu said right at the beginning of this topic is that Elon Musk did bring in his own team in with him, so that kind of shows that he is kind of a bit more switched on about what he was walking into and what he was going to have to deal with than most people realize. And the funny thing is, as well, you can kind of see a lot about how he runs his own teams and his other businesses just by looking at what's happened to Twitter in the very short amount of time since the takeover. The amount of changes to it as a platform from a programming perspective is actually quite immense for such a short period of time. There were bugs on Twitter that have been there for years, which were gone within 24 hours of him taking over.
Yeah.
And that's not something we should worry about, but I think it's indicative of how he runs his own teams and what he's going to bring to that. So,
and you can tell this from Tesla and SpaceX. Musk hires with three things in mind: hyper-competence, initiative, and innovation. Those are the three things he hammers again and again and again in all the literature, all the material for his hiring, all the cultural documents I've seen from SpaceX. Those are the three things he goes for in his hires. Now, if you think about what Twitter was targeting in its hires.
And I think that there's something that was on a lot of people's minds, obviously, which was that pinned tweet that he did saying, we're going to continue this moderation process and speaking with ADL and NAACP and all these sorts of things. I'm wondering what, because everyone would have been so confused because it was such a gypsy switch, it seemed. But I think, as many people sort of alluded to, it would have been that he would have faced how much of a control and stranglehold they have over his potential financial safety and security. And they probably would have demonstrated that to him at some point. And so
how much is he worth, Chris? Like, I don't know how
130 or 170 billion or something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Or is it 270?
It was
Yeah,
between
they
250 and
can't
300 billion after the Twitter purchase.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really can't hurt him, you know?
Well, that's not right. They can hurt him, but it's
They
the
can
sole
indeed.
question. What price do you have to pay to hurt a man with that much money? My suspicion is the answer is too fucking high.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of his
institutionalised him.
wealth, a lot of that wealth is, tied up in government contracts and other financial institutions and stuff like that.
But they can't hurt his lifestyle, is what I'm trying to say. Or I mean,
you never know. You never know.
No, Chris.
Well, you've seen what's possible with Kanye when they turn their mind to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but even with Kanye, they haven't hurt his lifestyle at all.
Yeah, but they can still continue chopping away at him until he's got nothing left.
They can,
basically.
but it's a task of decades to destroy someone with that much wealth.
Yeah, but they
Even if you go balls out for them, it'll take 20, 30 years. And all that you'll do is you will turn them from a multi-billionaire into a high 100 millionaire. You're never going to destroy them completely.
Which is not a hard place to be in. Let's be.
No, exactly. He's not going to be short of money anytime in his lifespan. The difference is, can he wander around splashing out 42 billion on Twitter, or is he just an extremely wealthy man?
Yeah. I mean, look, Chris, I know, is a roofer, and I'm an ex-military dude on a really crappy pension. And you know what? We're very vulnerable, but like someone like Elon Musk or Kanye West is not at all very vulnerable.
Well, with Elon, there's talk of investigations into this and that and the other. As long as they're civil in nature, then Musk will just pay his lawyers to take care of it, and that's the cost of doing business for someone like that. It's if any of those investigations become criminal in nature, that things could get interesting for him. But we're not there yet.
Here's another point too. I mean, we keep talking about this sort of material situation and lifestyle and whatever, but if you're someone like Elon Musk, which I assume doesn't actually spend too much time trying to make his own personal life super comfortable, he seems to be obsessed with whatever he's doing. And if you take away his ability to affect this much power and affect this many lives and do this much cool shit, what's he got to live for? Even if he does have net worth of 100 millions and he's got a comfortable home, you and I both know that when it comes to men like that, that doesn't mean jack shit. It's all about what you can do and what you're doing.
Yes,
being productive.
Chris is
you take that away.
On. Remember the Joe Rogan interview that he did years ago? It came through on there that it's very clear he is a man possessed by the desire to make a difference to humanity in the way that he sees as doable. And he describes not being able to sleep. He thinks about it so much on there. For my opinion, and I know this is not a popular one, is that he is a guy that views the money as a tool to get the thing he wants to get to, his vision for the world or whatever it might be. It's just another spanner to turn. He doesn't actually care about it as long as he's got enough to eat and live. I mean, I've known some very wealthy people in my lifetime, and I cannot think that any of them, driven as they might be in their own fields, would sleep on a factory floor in a sleeping bag, snatch 3 hours sleep and get up in the middle of the night again to continue working on a plan to save their company. That is a man who is driven to a different degree. I would say in his own way, he's some sort of ideologue or visionary, just in a classic autistic male kind of way, rather than the more modern feminine visionary.
Okay. That may be possible, I guess. Look, before we move on, we're talking about Twitter and social media. Does it really matter? Final thoughts on this one, guys. Starting with Chris, if you would, please, mate.
just to address what was just being said, Musk's appearance on Joe Rogan are part of his image as a pop science business celebrity. I don't believe that for a second, and I have friends that have said that before, but you can see it in him, and anyone that has that sort of drive themselves, they can see it in other people, and I can see it in him. He's got it. He's not this fake autist. Like, he is genuinely a mad genius that probably struggles to deal with his creative power, because he obviously looks like his head never stops ticking. So, but final thoughts on Twitter. Just wait and see. Basically, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Let's see what happens.
Fair enough. Mitch, anything?
I'm just of a mind that, wait and see. Rather telling Matt, the people bemoaning Twitter most, like, I don't know if you know who Mike Stuchberry is.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's pretty much went, I can't leave Twitter. Twitter is my life and all this, because apparently, going against internet add-ons on Twitter who happen to be right-wing in any way whatsoever. That's his entire life in a nutshell. So those kind of people getting shafted brings a smile to my face. But,
yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Jobu.
Look, two very, very quick points. So Twitter set up a portal for governments to log into to request that posts be taken down, and they had a 13-minute response time. So they obviously think it's important. And secondly, imagine if we had gone through COVID with a free and open internet. Things would have been, the last couple of years would have been very different, particularly around the things that shall not be named. So, I think it is important.
Yeah, all right, mate. Ataman?
I mean, basically the same mind as Mitch. I mean, it is too early to tell. It'd be interesting to see what happens. I'm not looking for anything particularly groundbreaking, but seeing all these people take massive L's is worth it in the short term, and probably in the long term too. I mean, seeing like, what's that guy's name? Stephen King, the author. Going like, I'll leave. It's like, dude, you got nothing else. There's nothing else in your life at this point. And it's the same for a lot of these people, and trying to see them adapt to the new landscape is going to be quite fun.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with any of that. I think Musk will probably be a plus for us on the right, but we need to watch it and
approach with caution.
Yeah, we need to watch it and see what happens. It might be, but let's see.
He is essentially just a very large human tool that we can use.
And aren't they all? All right, so next subject for this evening is, if you're a young man, should you go to university or get a trade? That's the next thing I want to ask you, dudes.
I think we need to delineate this stuff first, because in the past I've been very pro trade when we've talked about this topic, like, quite a way back. But I don't mean like go and become a painter decorator, although you could do that if you really like.
Yes.
I mean maybe something a little more specialized. Like maybe an electrician or something like that.
It also depends on the individual, because there are some blokes who will make great engineers. All right, I know those guys should probably go to university and become an engineer. But there are a lot of other guys who might not make great engineers and might be better off getting a trade, and that's really what we're speaking about this evening, I think.
Well, I mean, like, you want the super autistic answer? I mean, all online IQ tests are garbage, right? But go take the Norwegian Mensa IQ test, because it's probably the only one that's even halfway decent. And the range on it is between 100 and 140. And if you're 5 points over 100, the likelihood is you might still find yourself a little bit bored in what some people describe as a regular job. So... and then of course scale up from there. If you've got like 110 or upwards, give coding a try, and so on and so forth.
That's totally my own view. I think a lot of young men should look at doing a trade. which is not going to get you into like £500,000 worth of debt. And as Chris has said, for example, who is a tradesman, 7 years after you've done that, you might run your own business and not be doing too bad. So
I'd say even less than that in some cases. I mean, you could literally just do like a Sparky apprenticeship, and you could just go from there and start your own business if you wanted to. Like, I mean, you might not have the licenses to do huge corporate jobs, but you can set yourself up straight away as a sole trader and be earning easily $250,000 a year.
Yeah,
just doing small jobs.
Chris is correct. There are still reasons to do degrees, but I would say, again, coming from a HR point of view, and my original background is to do with early careers, so I've looked into this a lot. There's plenty of reasons to do a degree, but A, you need to be academically inclined. B, I would say that degree is only worth doing if it leads you directly to a career path. The classic one would be law or medicine, right? That everyone, you do a 5-year thing, then you go directly into being a doctor or whatever. If you want to look at the other side of things for the less academically inclined, I think it's really good because it gives you something that most people can become hyper competent at, and I think having something that you are hyper competent at is important for the male psyche on a number of levels. Absolutely. Especially young men, that age where you're uncertain and don't know everything, between or don't have that, in most cases, force of character and force of personality between 14 and 25, where you're still finding yourself to some degree. I'll give you an example of a friend of mine, right, who is a bright guy. I would say he is as intelligent as I am, probably more so in some regards, but not very academically inclined. And he left school at 16, did an electrical apprenticeship, became a specialist basically in doing complex rewiring on, without getting too specific and IDing him, certain types of vehicles, right? So he originally did out the classic building trade and then specialized in something. Did 5 years roughly there working for someone else, started his own business age 21, bought his own house age 25, runs his own business with 5 people working for him now and pulls in $500,000 a year. That is accessible to more or less anyone with the drive to do the long hours and hard work that comes with being some form of tradesman, whatever your specialism is, plumber, electrician.
And here's the thing too, like this just got brought up in the chat by the lorryist. He's a good old truck driver. Be a truck driver and listen to audiobooks to feed your brain. And this is something I wanted to say before as well. Is there's this lie that was I'll always encourage young guys to avoid university unless they want to do those degree required jobs, like, as you say, engineer, doctor, whatever. But even if you do a trade, like such as myself, when I'm working on the roof, I still have headphones in and I can listen to all manner of academic stuff and educate myself and listen to podcasts and whatever else. And it's like I get to do what I really like, with the cerebral sort of intellectual stuff. I get to feed my own brain, and at the same time, I get to work with my hands. I'm always moving around and exercising, and I'm making fantastic money. So it's just like that's what I tell young guys that aren't super duper smart. Is just like, trust me, there is a very good future ahead of you if you just take up a trade.
But you're, if you don't mind me asking, you're not a run-of-the-mill roofer, are you?
No.
you do very specialised types of.
Yeah, but everyone starts out in the relatively. Yeah. Stop me if I'm wrong. If this is different for you, Chris, but from what I've seen, everyone starts out as a generic electrician, plumber, etc., and then usually they find a niche of that type of work they particularly enjoy, or
that's exactly
there is a particular demand for, and they go, right, I'm going to specialise in that. Yeah, that's what my mate did. He went from earning very generic wages to being one of only about 30 or 40 people in the country who has a specialist business that repairs this particular type of vecle. So he's got his market sewn up, and that's what a lot of people do.
Lord Chris posted some like images on the Discord of the roof he was doing last week, and like they were really big panels, like they really
and
were.
I was doing it on my own.
Yeah, and he was doing it on his own, but it was a gorgeous view of like
Yeah.
rainforest all around him, and I'm
Yeah, it's
sure
right
he
on
was.
right on the coast of Mission Beach. It was a 3-story,
Yeah,
just this weird ergonomic sort of stupid architectural design where they made the roof panels run in a weird direction.
yeah,
15 meter long roof sheets, and I was putting them in on my own. It was good fun.
yeah.
But now I've hired a little minion.
You could see it was hard work, but like it was also
view.
a lovely view.
And that's the view in most places that I work at.
And as Chris said, he could listen to podcasts while he was doing this stuff. And he's making a damn good living, you know? And that's what you have to do. You have to make a damn good living. If you want to get married and find a good woman who's going to be your wife, you need to make a reasonable living, guys. This is it's not rocket science, you know?
But part of that, Neil, to make a reasonable living is doing something you feel you can become good at or get some degree of pleasure or satisfaction out. I have worked, before I went into what I do now, in something I absolutely despised. And I never got good at it because I despised doing it. You have to have some degree of pleasure in doing something to master it. Exactly. And people belittle this for young men. I think it's probably one of the most important things for a young man somewhere between 12 and 20, and that sort of age range, typically, to become hyper competent at something, anything.
Yes.
Like imagine if you had a cohort of young boys between the ages of 14 and 18 that by the time they were 18 they were a fully qualified electrician or a fully qualified plumber, roofer, whatever. Like, imagine the future, and you adapt that sort of Japanese style of mastery of the most specific thing, and the better and better you get you enter this zone. And it's a zone that every man needs to get into, and that's what they're made to do. Most men are made to do this exact thing, which is entering a state of flow, doing something that they're a master at, and then they just disappear. Their ego disappears into this very, very specific thing. And when you come out of it, it feels meaningful.
Moment, isn't it?
It's peace. Yeah.
Look, your brain is just subsumed into the activity. You don't need to concentrate, but you're in a state where there's no other thought or movement going on. You're just doing the thing, and you almost sort of. I used to find this with martial arts. Almost trance-like. You come out of it at the end, and you're like, "What have I just done?" Almost.
Yeah.
And you look at it and go, "Wow, that was really good." When someone shows what you've just done.
Yeah. Look, I think once like Chris Gard, like once his business really gets going, he's going to have at least 2 16, 17-year-old dudes who are going to be learning how to do that stuff. And he'll be a good male role model for them. And that's all we can really ask of people these days.
Well, that's
Probably
what,
because, sorry.
I was just going to say, that's what someone in my street's literally done. You know, he started out as a small-time electrician, and now he's got like 4 or 5 young lads working for him. And one of them's, you know, been working for him for sort of 6-7 years, and he's sort of been growing up with it, and he's now running his own little team within this same small business. And
Cool.
it's really doing well for him, and it's good to see what that can do for sort of the community as well, because these are all sort of local people too. So
I would say whatever job you choose to do, some jobs are at very high risk of automation within the foreseeable future. Trades are not one of them because there's too much fine motor coordination for the current generation of robots to be able to do it in too much individual variation. Something like truck driving, I'm not bashing truck drivers, I've got no issue with it as a career, but that is a prime example of high risk. I mean, some of you guys are Australian, right? You must have seen those massive automated land trains they have now.
Indeed.
Of the trucks on the remote roads, yeah?
Yeah. They run over even more. They run over even more Aboriginals than real drivers do.
Okay,
did we accidentally build a racist AI? Joking aside, that is the prime thing. Same as driving for a living as a taxi driver or something. These things will exist for a few more years, maybe 20 years. They're gone and they're not coming back at that point. So I would say stay clear of things there's something called the Human Automation Index, and it basically rates careers on how likely they are to become automated within a generation. It's well worth having a look at that before choosing whatever route you go down if you're a young guy listening to this. But as a rule, almost all the trades are pretty much automation proof within the foreseeable future. They just can't be replicated in the current technology.
To be accurate, there are these extremely over the top complicated machines that can, for instance, concrete and roof a house from scratch, but the logistics of such a device for mass scale is utterly impossible, at least not for the next 100 years.
Yes, exactly. We've got to go through an entire technological shift before these things become viable in there. So it's not something to worry about for the next century. Whereas I even the most skeptical person thinks we will have self-driving cars in the next 20 years en masse.
All right. All I'm going to say about that is that if you're in the north of Australia, in the land of land trains with like 2 and 3 bodies of trucks,
sometimes there's 4.
Yeah, I think I think that's only in the Northern Territory, but yeah, all right.
In Mount Isa, they have four carriage trucks.
Yeah, but like generally speaking, if you've got like this white guy driver in the cab, he tries not to run over Aboriginals because we generally don't do that.
Generally,
we really try not to do that.
I don't know. After last week's Abo Hour, I'm kind of thinking maybe shut your game down.
No. You're completely wrong, Adam. It's like the best protection for Aboriginals going to sleep on the road is a white driver who will try and stop if he sees them.
Yeah, and has human instincts and stuff like that.
Yeah, because he's a good man. Because they are just good men. I'm sorry, but So yeah, but if we ever get totally automated trucks, the Aboriginals are in big problems because they won't stop. They just won't.
Yeah, Australia's going to do some. Yeah, you know what Australia's going to go for? It's just going to go through some fully automated luxury racism.
Yeah, they just won't stop. They'll just run them over. They won't care. It's automated, man. They will not care. Like someone in the road. Give a shit, man. Splat. That's all I am. The only thing
it's a case of are the sensors and everything else designed for people drunks falling asleep in the road in dips and divots and stuff like that? Probably. Probably not.
They won't be. Whereas your average white Anglo Celtic Australian road train driver desperately doesn't want to run anyone over.
Well, yeah, because for a self-driving lorry that's been mass-produced, the market in Australia isn't big enough for a company to probably spend that much time adapting a lorry specifically for that market, whereas a local driver just has to learn those roads anyway. So
yeah, and he will, because he's a good man, just don't want to kill someone,
Just one thing to throw in on the back of this. I think the market is going to swing even further against degrees in the near future, because what I'm hearing from a number of people who are in charge of hiring for firms I used to work for, let's call them engineering firms to keep it generic, very big ones, you would know the name, let's put it that way. They are now flipping away from graduates towards apprentices because all the stats are starting to show that basically apprentices work harder, stay longer, perform higher, expect less pay, all these kind of things. I think you're going to find there is a massive swing away from graduates in these previously career professions. Medicine seems to be the holdout at the moment, but over the next 10 years, I think you will see something like my old firm that I used to work for took in something like about 90-95% out of 100, 90 plus graduates, maybe 10 apprentices. The text I just looked up on my phone now from someone about 6 months ago says this year they're looking at about 50-50. Next year it'll swing firmly into apprentices, so they will take on comparatively few graduates and a majority of apprentices.
Yeah, I remember seeing something a little while back, and it was, I believe it was a woman of color from Google, who was fired or pushed out in some way because she'd come out of some university as a programmer for Google, and she was probably retarded, but she was basically not competent enough for the job, and just spent her entire time there just trying to push, sort of agitprop, and they sort of pushed her aside, and she was on there raging because Google was setting up its own sort of little mini inside university for I suppose taking
Yes.
people that had a little bit of a self-taught background and then finishing off their training.
Yes, because those
And
people show motivation and
yeah,
drive, and the training that they go through with a degree or apprenticeship or internal training is tailored to the company. So what you get is someone who's motivated and can do exactly what you want them to, that you yourself have trained, rather than someone who spend at best 4 years learning the theory with no practical, and at worst comes with a load of mental, emotional, and political baggage from a university. Seriously,
yeah,
you should.
Yeah.
So I see the stats. Remember working in HR, and I see the rate that these people from university-educated backgrounds, particularly with arts degrees of various kinds, BAs rather than BScs, how high they over-index in complaints, issues, all the rest of it. It is almost a red flag at this point. To
Yeah.
the point where if I could discriminate in hiring in that way, I fucking would.
Yep. And you would imagine, of course, that an apprentice-style employee would be far more valuable than a pre-primed retard from university. just by intuition.
And there's this underlying message that people who go to university are told you're brilliant, you're special, you've gone to university, you're the top, you're elite. And the reality is most people who do now are not. They're
right.
really not geniuses anymore, yet they act and they have this expectation that they are treated as if they are, which is half the issue.
Yeah.
I would just say that 555 in the chat is saying cow and kangaroos are more common roadkill. Do you know what I'd say to that 555? Is that the actual human drivers of road trains are far less likely to kill cow or kangaroos than some sort of automatic machine, which will kill a lot more. That's the only thing I will say. Because they will try not to kill them, partly because, like, if you run over a cow in a road train, it might actually come up and go through your windscreen and, like, not do you any favors as well.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, humans always are better in those situations. Always. Go and watch anything about fire pilots. And fire pilots always win against machine learning because they're human and they have better ideas and out-of-the-box ideas.
Well, yeah, I mean, from my sort of rudimentary understanding of it, it seems to be that machine learning obviously learns by experiencing it. So it has to run X number of simulations, X number of times to build. But a sort of human pilot can be a bit more predictive. They can forward plan a bit better, which kind of
and think outside the box, and they can think outside the box and say, okay, I'm going to do something totally that no one will expect, which machine learning will not do at this stage at all.
Yeah.
Well, and there's also the interesting moral dimension, right? If I drive down the street and mow down an Aboriginal, to use the example, I'm clearly culpable, right? I was at the wheel. It was my fault ultimately, unless the guy dived out at the last second or something. It's on me. If an automated vehicle does it, do you blame the programmer? Which one? If so, do you blame the vehicle? Do you blame the manufacturer? Do you blame the software manufacturer, the hardware manufacturer? Do you blame the guy who programmed the AI? It's a complete moral black box. There's no way to
100% binary. Yeah, totally agree. It's bullshit basically because only humans can make moral decisions. AI can't.
And we have
bizarrely one of the movies. Go on, sorry.
I was just going to say we have, biological architecture and instincts and stuff like that also inform our decision making that's vastly superior to computers.
Yeah, well, there was a good movie. I mean, it was a bad movie, but it was a good, interesting little philosophical set of thoughts on AI and robotics. What was the Will Smith movie with the robot? I remember that one.
iRobot.
Oh yeah,
iRobot. That was it. And the whole thing, he saves the guy instead of the kid. Whereas the morally correct thing to do is try and save the kid. The statistically correct thing to do is to save the adult with a higher chance of survival in that situation. That's a perfect encapsulation of you can't teach an AI values in the same way, or at least not anything we would recognize in as an AI now and in the current gen. And we don't even really have anything approaching AI outside of research laboratories. Mostly what we have are very complex expert systems that mimic AI.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've said before, my degree for my sins, I do nothing relevant with it whatsoever these days, but was on the early stuff to do with AI, so machine learning. I did a lot with it, and basically we're nowhere near it. All we can do is do increasingly complex expert systems at the moment. There are no true AI or learning machines. There's just how sophisticated can you make the adaptive code? That's it.
That's
What binary? Why so often do AI systems that get set up become racist, for example?
Because AI can't differentiate between valid, inverted commas, inputs and invalid inputs. If it sees a lot of something, its tendency, unless you've told it directly not to, is to assume that input is valid. So let's take the classic, the Twitter next post etc. Right? It sees a million of those and it assumes that is the correct thing to do anytime you start a tweet with an N and then stop. It has no moral compass. Unless you tell it explicitly you can't do that, it will assume that's valid in learning code. And you can program in things like moral contextual, so you can program it to see that tweet maybe is always followed by a tweet saying don't fucking say it, it's rude, or something like that, but it still recognizes it as valid.
Yeah, it sees the engagement.
Teach an AI the conceptual morality. If you think of so we did this. What was this study? There was a study from the 1970s that estimated the number of neural connections a human being needs to make to form a simple judgment of should I talk to someone or should I hit them. Essentially, it comes down to in a situation. Should I speak to someone where I feel an emotion, or should I react angrily or emotively to it? And it's something like 4,500 different neural pathways needed to make that judgment. That's why babies just always respond with a scream, because they haven't formed the set of connections and the intercomplexities between them. Imagine trying to teach that to an AI. That's for one situation.
This is what I was trying to explain to one of my friends who's of the belief, like many people, that that human experience is literally just a series of computations, and therefore we can make AI basically mirror that same sort of set, like subroutines of whatever. But I was trying to explain to him, like, no, there is a biological, physiological foundation that underpins it, and a lot of those so-called computations are informed by physiological processes happening in the body. It's embodied, and unless you have that substructure, you're never ever going to create any sort of consciousness or whatever you want to call it in a simulated realm. It's not going to happen unless they can build a human from the bottom up. The
most successful learning machine experiments all involve multiple machines. You've ever seen the mice experiment where they follow each other and learn the maze? They start to learn behavior. I forget what the name of it is now. That's one of the more successful ones, and it only works when you have the code for the mice in that exact body. They've tried putting it in even a very slight, like it has, I think they moved it from a mice with 3 wheels, like the old Robin Reliant style configuration, into one with 4 wheels, and it immediately breaks the code. The mice just become useless. They have to learn it all again from scratch. And that's a very basic, superficial change. It's still running around on wheels, doing more or less the same thing. So Chris is entirely right. So much of thought is linked to physiology and what we've evolved with, that it's virtually impossible. I mean, we are at the equivalent of rubbing 2 sticks together versus the nuclear reactor that we need for true AI.
Yeah.
Look, I'm supposed to be like a horrible white racist, and
as
we should all be.
Yeah, no, like if someone calls me a racist, I just laugh at them. But like I've been into villages in Southwest Africa where every man, woman, and child, and baby, and old age pensioner was butchered by a swabber, and it made me feel sick.
Yeah.
Because apparently my white racism is not quite that extreme. So I don't know. I just think that we are living in a world of lies at the moment. Really.
Mm. Yeah.
That's what I think. We're living in a world of lies. And I think like any British or Australian or South African soldier would have had pretty much the same emotions in that same circumstance. So yeah. Doesn't mean that we want to be like completely taken over by brown and black people, but it does mean we have a basic humanity, which I guess many Christians would say, all right, well, that's a Christian thing. Perhaps it is. I don't know. But it's certainly a Western thing. Final subject for the night, guys, is voting in general elections or any elections really worth it? That's the final subject for this evening.
No.
And I'll go one further. As it stands, the current democratic process is entirely worthless on a number of levels. You've only got to look at what's happening now in the US. Have you seen the early reports of voter fraud from the midterms there? Well, to the point where there's video of this. If anyone thinks I'm full of shit, go look up the video. It's on record. The guy walks up to the voting station and says, I'm a registered Republican. I'm here to vote today. Guy says, yeah, sorry, you can't vote. Well, why not? Well, there's a problem. We can't issue anything at the moment. Come back later. Next guy walks up. So you're a registered Democrat. There you go. Form.
Yeah.
The other guy hasn't even walked off yet. He's just stepped about a foot away. That's how overt the fraud is now in most of these systems, and the US is just the obvious example. With
look,
I'm sure this goes on in other areas to the same degree.
I totally agree with what you're saying there, Binary. I don't disagree at all. Although always remember that UK has a prime minister who wasn't elected by anyone, but not even by a fraudulent election. Rishi Sunak is,
that's
just
a temporary problem. The macro problem at the moment is that the left has collectively decided throughout most of the Western world that cheating is now acceptable at every election. And the problem with cheating is once you start, you can't stop, because then the people that come in after you look at what you were doing before.
Yeah, I mean, look, how could Joe Biden, the senile pedophile, somehow be the most popular
just for Susan on the record, most popular president ever?
Yeah, the senile pedophile, most popular president ever. Yeah, absolutely.
More than Obama.
And just to emphasize how big that vote swing was, by the way, did anyone look at how many votes Obama lost and still won in his second term? He lost about 3.7 million votes.
Yep.
So Biden somehow, despite the fact the guy couldn't campaign, could barely leave his basement, couldn't speak, lost every debate, and not only all the
was still the most popular president in American
somehow
history.
Increased it by 3 times more than the first black president, who spent something like 4 years having the media ravenously lick his ballsack in office on the first time, and still lost 3.5 billion votes.
But
so
still,
if you believe that, I've got a couple of bridges to sell you.
Yeah, because Trump gained votes in that election too, in his second election, and still somehow lost.
Don't forget that the dead came back to life to vote for him.
Yes.
As Lady Charlotte says.
Many dead Americans.
Yeah, literally, Biden is the coming of King Aragorn, just summoning the army of the dead out to those ballots.
People talk about it like it's new. It's not new. The Democrats have been doing this for 50, 60 years. What's new is the scale at which they're doing it. And if you listen to all the Dems talk in the US at the moment, that's what they're afraid of. They're not afraid of cheating at the next election. They're afraid that they can't cheat enough, that he's that unpopular, they can't cheat enough. They're already setting it up. If you listen to the messaging,
Yeah.
that all the votes will take several days to count in some states. I'm like, never used to. It was always counted by about 4 a.m. in even like the most remote, like Montana is about the worst state to count the votes in, right? Because it's so bloody spread out. Half the voting stations are in the mountains or behind mountain ranges. You've got to fly them from place to place, all that kind of shit. And it still manages to count by about 5 in the morning, right? So he's now saying several days, which basically says to me, we don't know how many ballots we've got to fabricate, so we need a couple of days to print them. If it's that bad, we can't even guess how it's how many extra we need. It might be, I might need to fake 30 million ballots this time.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty bleak. And of course, you've had this thing going on in Brazil as well just recently, which is also pretty maddening. I haven't really been keeping up with it, but it's a shame Bolsonaro lost. But yeah,
it's so blackpilling. I don't know if you watched UO this week on Popular Opinions. AA and I were debating this, and he was saying, AA was saying, I hope he doesn't. I hope he goes the distance. Well, he's not going to. He's already started talking. People who are going to cross the Rubicon don't talk. They cross the Rubicon.
No.
The dialogue is over.
Yeah, I mean, I actually had a stream with some dude who I can't remember the name of. Don't care about anymore. He's dead to me. On my channel, like back when the first election, when Trump's second election came up and he lost, and he was saying to me then, can he do it? Can he cross the Rubicon? It's like, well, no, because he hasn't spent his election time putting his people in the right places. He spent his entire time doing the same thing that the Tory party would do here, which is just to sit around and go, oh look, but we got black unemployment down and stuff like that. And Bolsonaro did basically the same thing. He spent his time in office going, oh look, I've made the economy better, I've fixed this, I've lowered crime, and it's like, okay, but come election time, that isn't actually what gets you votes. Funny enough, or it isn't what wins you elections anyway. It gets you plenty of actual real votes, but it doesn't count at the end of the day.
Yep.
Yeah.
Steve's got a good point with that super chat. India, a country with what was the statistic about India? Something like 60% of its roads still basically unpaved. It only has like working power and water networks to about 40% of the country. That country counts its votes reliably by about 1 a.m. I just looked it up after Steve said that, about 1 to 1:30 a.m. So it counts it 50% faster than the most advanced economy in the world, if you believe that.
And most Indian roads and railways, etc., were built by the British, of course, pre-1948. So, like the vast majority.
Yeah, Hindu rate of growth, that entire economy basically ground to a halt after 1948.
Well, I mean, their economy's doing better than it used to be, but
it's started to pick up more recently.
Yeah, but it's I don't know, man. It's like, but this is another country that the West has driven into the arms of communist China. I mean, like Russia. What a big brain deal to do. Senile pedophile Biden has driven Russia and India into the arms of communist China. I mean, I can't think of anything that's more intelligent than that, really.
Well, they're highly narcissistic, aren't they? They can't. They need you to love them, and they can't actually ever take an L. They can't ever take a genuine loss. They can never humble themselves and actually play diplomacy properly, ever.
I don't know. Look, what do you think about this? In all honesty, Alan, I don't think that senile pedophile Biden is Jewish, but I'm sure he's influenced.
Well, he's got a rabbi, so
I'm sure he's influenced by a lot of Jewish people. But like, my deal looking at this is that like, there's a hell of a lot of these scumbag bastards who are nothing to do with like small hats, Where do they come from?
Well, I mean, that's a stream in of itself. Let's be honest.
Well, yeah, maybe, but I mean, I don't think it's a stream we can do on YouTube. But yeah,
well, we can give it a bash. One
Yeah,
last hurrah.
I think we'd get banned, but yeah. But where does it come from? And I'm saying this because, like, if you go a certain amount of time on a YouTube stream, they don't pay as much attention. So
It came from the political refugees fleeing the Stalinist purges.
yeah, maybe.
I mean, if you wanted to put a date on it when it seriously started to happen, that's when I'd say. But
What was Winston Churchill's problem? Being a lord's
being a drunk.
second son. Yeah, maybe. All right, maybe. But yeah, I look, honestly, I just don't get it. It's like, I do get when people say to me about the JQ and all this kind of stuff, and I'll go, yeah, fair enough. But then I look at all the people who are nothing to do with that group of people, supposedly anyway, who still go along with it totally. Like most of the people in the G7 and the World Economic Forum and all of these people, they just totally go along with this shit. What is their deal? I don't get it.
Well, it's still tied into those gremlins with small hats, but it's also, you know, I mean, I think what's his name, Apolitical George, who you've had on in the past.
Yeah.
I think he once talked about how, like, you know, once, I mean, he didn't say this point because obviously he's a bit cringe on this topic, but when they get their foot in the door and you can get a bit of immigration, a bit of diversity into communities, into institutions, that actually, like the diversity itself actually makes people, through the process of deracination, actually puts an outgroup preference into people, or well, it's less of an outgroup preference, it's more of an in-group hatred, but still.
Yeah, I'm kind of agreeing with 555, who says I don't buy the JQ. It's a white liberal.
You're relapsing.
I'm not sure I am, to be honest. It's because there is so many white liberals who go along with this shit.
Yeah, misdiagnosis,
sure.
In my view, the whole JQ thing is people are attributing complex conspiracies to something that's fairly easily explained. And I would put it as the moral collapse of society and the collapse of standards in that society of intelligence, morality, etc. Politicians and politics are drawn from the people in the society, same as the police, right? You don't get corrupt policemen without corruption in society. It's the same with politicians. What's happened over the last century? There's been a complete collapse of general morality, general standards, and general, for lack of a better term, willingness to hold oneself to high standards throughout society. All you're seeing is that reflected in the politics and politicians that come out of it.
It was consensual at the end of the day.
Yes, we didn't. Nobody
at the top level.
this.
It was consensual.
Yes, you can argue that there's reasons why that collapse came about, but there is no doubt that we are a morally inferior, morally speaking, society in most ways, not all of them, but the vast majority, to a century ago. I mean, how many people would have cancelled killing unborn children, for example, a century ago?
Binary. Whenever I'm in doubt about a question, I think, what would my father or my grandfather or my great-grandfather have said about this question? And invariably it then becomes clear, and it's very often not what we would say today.
How do you mean?
Which would be
well, look, if you've got a moral question today, okay, and I'm not sure what I should do, I look at what my dad would have said, or his dad, or my granddad would have said. And what their views were is actually probably the moral position.
Right, yeah, but the idea of intergenerational wisdom was actively killed by, you know, the media and various other outlets and the cultural inlays and the cultural inroads and stuff like that.
But it's a lie.
Oh yeah, absolutely it is. But you know, at the end of the day, people are malleable to an extent when it comes to their front end ideas, and they're quite malleable.
And I mean, it's obviously no mystery too, because I mean, the way I see it, you take a group of rootless, forever in the position of the exile, people with a highly cerebral religious culture and a highly what would you call it, debate style religious culture and tradition and intergenerational wisdom passing down, etc., etc. And you place them in a place where they can basically have open access to whatever sectors that they flourish in, which happens to be politics and finance. And of course, you press fast forward on that process over the next 100 years, and you get what we have. But it requires consent all the way through. And the fact of the matter is that people decided to consent to whatever it is that's being implied when this topic comes up. But at the end of the day, it was still consensual. It was not forced. It was not, manipulated from the top. It was consensual by all our leaders. So,
well, yeah, Chris, I agree with you. But then you've also got to look at people like Enoch Powell, who was enormously popular in the UK in the late 1960s, and totally got destroyed by the political class.
Look what his party did to him. So.
Yeah, and most ordinary people supported him totally.
And Mary Whitehouse, within just a couple of years of her being on the TV, they had entire sort of sitcoms, as it were, where they were sort of deriling her and depicting her supporters as stupid and inbred and ignorant and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. I'm not such a fan of Mary Whitehouse as I am of Enoch Powell, but yeah, I get what you're saying there, mate. I just think we've been conned for many, many years now.
You're not wrong.
The pleb class has, yes.
The quality of the debate was also something different back then. Everyone presumably has seen the Jonathan Miller-Powell debate.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
One of my favorites.
And you look at, Miller is obviously an insufferable leftist, but he can actually form an argument and a principle there. There was a point where the left were able to genuinely argue and make points. And in a way, the modern crazies are less dangerous than this because everyone can see them frothing at the mouth. But that's, who can form amongst modern right-wing politicians, who can form, as they are, who can form the similar caliber arguments to Powell? We're on the same decline path as the left, just we're not quite as far down it.
Yeah, all right. Well, we're all being clowned. I'll grant you that, Binary. But we are so much less than they are clowned. It's unbelievable. I'm not sure if I accept.
I'm actually not sure if I accept the analysis that sometimes comes out of cyclical history about this being part of a decline, because there's like 1,000,001. I accept the idea of cyclical history, but there's 1,000,001 books and articles about the so-called suicide of the West or the suicide of Europe, or I kind of see it more as a murder, and therefore something that can, at least for now, be reversed.
What's the difference in the end state though? Still dead, right?
Well, yeah, on a long enough time frame, yeah, but that doesn't mean it isn't still worth fighting for.
Can I just ask people that George in the chat is saying, is it me or are all your streams gone? Are all my streams gone, guys? Please let me know.
Oh, actually, yeah, I can only see.
Are you currently being scrubbed?
Oh no, it's because they break them all up with the new update. You've got videos, and then you've got live, and it lists everything.
Okay, you probably have to look at live, George. If you look at live, hopefully you'll find all of them. And if you can't, we are on Odyssey. Which I spent
in a minute, guys, because my voice is starting to break down again. So
no worries, Binary. We're going to finish at the top of the hour anyway. But yeah. George, you should be able to find them if you look online. People have been telling me that, YouTube has been changing everything. YouTube really only wants mainstream media lies plus cat videos and makeup videos and this kind of shit.
I think they want makeup videos more than they want anything political. That makes them a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. They're not interested in our sort of video, and I think that's why it's being changed, to be honest. But yeah. All right. Any final thoughts, gents, before we move on, and anything you want to show?
No, nothing from me.
Nah, Nate from
Binary, anything you want to show? Or
Not for me at the moment, thank you. I've got to drop off now because my voice is really starting to go.
Go well. Thank you very
Cheers
much
all.
for joining
Good
me.
to
See you,
see you all.
Binary.
Later.
Have a good one, mate.
Go on, man. Mitch, anything you wanted to show or final thoughts?
on topic of like young men with university. I mean, I don't know how valuable I'll be on this because I dropped out of university to pursue electrical. So
Good lad.
it's sort of a STEM stuff. There's not really much point going to university.
And let me tell people that Mitch only speaks about 7 or 8 languages. But yeah, and he does. He speaks 7 or 8 languages. So, you know. Sorry, Mitch. Carry on, man.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in terms of like, shall we say like the next generation of elites going off of people I met at university. I feel like in a way the next generation of anti-white elites, or whatever you want to call them. I feel like in a way it's good if they get into power because they're more reckless, they're lower brow IQ. They just seem to be more driven by emotion compared to like you take Tony Blair, who's more calm and collected, but then you got the new crop coming up from the universities who are just seem very, for want of a better term, feminine in terms of how they approach the world. It's very emotionally driven. There's no rational logic. They're very reckless. So I think if they get into power after the likes of Tony Blair, it's actually be good for us in the long run.
All right.
Yeah, that's true. They are basically all spastics. So
the only thing I'd say to that is I would slow hang Tony Blair. Like
in Minecraft, sir.
I was just going to say Susan in Minecraft. I would.
Oh yeah, I'm also basically at the point where I'd just pole pot all these people.
Yeah, I would slow hang Tony Blair in Minecraft, and really laugh at his leg skiing. But that's just me. But you know, whatever. And I get ill every day seeing.
I endorse this message.
I get ill every day, as Chris said on the Discord, like watching what's being done to our people. So yeah. I do. All right. However, I'm now going to be able to slag Chris off because our outgoing musical stream should be Huzzah wearing blue, and he's not. He's a infantry dude in a.
You're talking about shilling a day. The video, yeah, because that was animated by Cringe Walker, and Panama Hat had presented that poem to me.
It's great. It's great. It's a great poem. It's a good song, but the dude should be in Huzzah's outfit because he's a cavalry troop sergeant major, I believe, isn't he, Chris?
Late troop sergeant major, yeah.
Late troop sergeant major, absolutely right. So anyway, as always, I'm going to play us out on a tune, and having slagged Chris off, I'll now play his tune.
My name is O'Kelly, I've heard the reveille from Pier to Bereilly, from Leeds to Lahore. Hong Kong, the Shawa, Loch now and the Tawa, and 55 more, all ended in war. Black Death and his quickness, the depth and the thickness of sorrow and sickness, I've known on my way. But I'm old and nervous, I'm cast from the service, and all I deserve is a shilling a day. A shilling a day, what a blooming good pay. Lucky to touch it, a shilling a day. Shilling a day, boys, a blooming good pay. I'm lucky to touch it, a shilling a day. drives me half crazy to think of the days I went slap for the gazy, my sword at my side. And we rode hell for leather, both squadrons together, that didn't care whether we lived or we died. But it's no use despairing, my white mask no sharing, and ye commissary the pay to better. So it's me you be holding, the wet and the cold by the Grand Metropole, please give me a letter. Oh, give him a letter, can do no better. These troops are the major, run without a letter. Give him his letter, can do no better. Late troops are the major, run without a letter. A shilling a day, what a blooming good pay. I'm lucky to touch it, a shilling a day. Shilling a day, boys, a blooming good pay. I'm lucky to touch it, a shilling a day. Shilling a day.
Shilling a day. Thanks for shilling me with shilling a day. And yeah, if anyone wants to find any more of that music, just go on my channel. It's YouTube, Chris Gard. You'll find all my stuff there. Lots of sea shanties and folk songs based on Kipling and Chesterton poems. And it's all very good fun. I've got a few more in the chamber, so lots more to come.
Nice. Has Duke died? What's happened?
Duke's died.
I was just going to say, you will find a link to Chris Gard's channel in the description of the video in due course. But hopefully, eventually, that video will get changed to a huzzah rather than an infantry guy.
I'll have to talk to Cringe Walker about that.
Yeah,
he made it.
Absolutely right. Like it's a great song. I do like it, and it's a good Kipling poem. And like the point of it, if for anyone who doesn't get it, is like this dude is like he's left the British Army, and like he's working. People give him letters to give to people, and he used to be a troop sergeant major who would charge sword in hand against all Britain's enemies. And the best he can do at the moment is like in India or Africa or wherever it might be. And the best he can do is to get a shilling for taking a letter somewhere. And that's what the song is about. And that's what Kipling was talking about. And of course, Kipling was a friend of the ordinary British Tommy Atkins soldier.
Mm.
He liked those dudes because he knew some of them in India, and that's why some of his books are so great.
And he was one of the most talented visionaries of being able to convey the feeling of the common soldier of the day to us now. So it sort of eliminates that the myth of the nothing but glory or nothing but ugliness. It was actually for a lot of people it was quite unglorious, and for some it was great. But he was able to convey both feelings. So very skilled poet, very talented man he was.
Yeah. Kipling was a great man, and he actually made Tommy Atkins, the ordinary British soldier, become a hero in British popular culture in the later 19th century, more than anyone else, I think. And even Indians love his book Kim, because it's so accurate about India at that stage. Great guy, Rudyard Kipling. And of course, he lost his own son in the First World War fighting with the Irish Guards. So, yeah. Thank you very much to my guests this week, Chris and Mitch and Ataman and Christ, who's the guy?
Binary server.
Binary server, and also Jobu, Jobu was on for a while. Thank you
He-
very much, guys. We'll be back next week with the next episode. I thought this one was quite interesting. Go well. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the stream if you did, and we'll see you next week. Go well, people.
Take care, friends.